How low can you go? This seems to be the question that Motorola execs were asking themselves. The Moto G shook the market up by proving that smooth performance didn't always mean having to shell out over $600. This time around, the Moto E is aimed at the next billion, the feature phone users, prospective buyers that could go out and buy their first smartphone today. But at this price, there are bound to be some compromises, right? Sure, but what are these compromises and how do they affect the next billion? Well, these are the questions that we're going to try to answer in this video. So, if this is your first time here or in case you've plain old forgotten, my name's Ash and you're watching C4E Tech. Let's get started. The Moto E takes design cues from both the Moto G as well as the Moto X. We have a micro USB port at the bottom, the power button and the volume rockers to the left, the 3.5mm headphone jack, and the secondary noise cancelling microphone up top. The phone is 12.3mm thick and weighs in at 142 grams. On the back, we have a 5MP fixed focus camera and a dimple with the Motorola logo. This curved back is user replaceable, and inside we have a 1980mAh non-user replaceable battery, dual micro SIM card slots and a micro SD card slot. That's a welcome addition given that the Moto E only has 4 gigs of onboard storage. To the front, we have the sensors, earpiece, notification LED, lower below, the Corning Gorilla Glass 3 covered 4.3-inch display, and at the bottom, a front-facing speaker. It's worth noting that the Moto E does not have a front-facing camera. Overall, the Moto E feels solidly built, no creaking or wobbling of any kind. It's also worth noting that the Moto E has a degree of water resistance thanks to the nano coating on top. Now moving on to the display, the Moto E has a 4.3-inch LCD display with a 540 by 960 pixel resolution. This means the pixel density is about 256 pixels per inch. While that's excellent for a phone in this price range, the display does have a few quirks though. The viewing angles are not great and sunlight eligibility is average at best. Underneath the hood, the Moto E is powered by a Snapdragon 200 chipset. This houses 2 Cortex-A7 cores clocked at 1.2 GHz each, coupled with an Adreno 302 GPU and 1 GB of RAM. While the synthetic benchmark scores are nothing to write home about, surprisingly the Moto E was able to handle even a few intensive games that we didn't really expect it to. In short, it punches well above its weight. The front-facing speaker is pretty decent too, loud but with a little distortion at the highest levels. Audio via the included earphones was okay. It's worth mentioning that the Moto E has a FM radio built in. All this is powered by a 1980mAh non-user replaceable battery and the battery life is pretty good. People with moderate usage shouldn't have any issues getting through a full day on a single charge. The phone also features a 5MP fixed focus camera to the back. There is no LED flash here. The camera, unfortunately, is bad. There's no other way to say it. If you have a lot of patience and the conditions are just right, you could get some decent pictures, but mostly the pictures aren't gonna turn out great. The UI is similar to what we saw on the Moto G and the X, minimalistic and works well. Fixed focus means you can't shoot close-up images though. Now moving on to software, the Moto E runs on an almost stock build of Android 4.4.2 KitKat. There's almost no bloat here. Motorola has added a few apps like Motorola Migrate that helps you, migrate to the Moto E from a different device. The Alert app that helps you maintain emergency contacts and send out a message or activate an alarm in case of an emergency. Motorola Assist that automates certain actions like turning off the ringer when you're asleep or if you're in a meeting. Now barring these apps, which do add more functionality than count as bloat, the interface is vanilla Android. That means even with just 2 Cortex-A7 cores, everything's relatively smooth. Why did I just say relatively? Well, let me explain. When I tested the Moto G, I absolutely adored it. It was my daily driver for a few weeks and it never annoyed me one bit. Now that's lavish praise considering I get to test out the latest and greatest that Android has to offer all year. Phones that cost 3 times as much as what the Moto G did. But with the Moto E, there are some noticeable slowdowns. Again, nothing that someone moving from a feature phone or an old Android phone would notice. So overall, I'd say that the UI is pretty good too. To be honest, I wouldn't even disagree if you said that I'm being a little bit too harsh on the Moto E. End of the day, our experience is what sets our expectations, and for the last 3 years, like I said, my experience has been testing one flagship after the next. So where am I going with this? Well, most of the issues that I've pointed out in this video, be it the viewing angles or the loudspeaker distortion at the highest levels or even the little bit of lag with the user interface, these are issues that an eye that's trained to spot the tiniest of flaws sees. These aren't things that someone buying their first smartphone, someone of the next billion, would notice. And therein we get our answer. Yes, there are compromises that Motorola's had to make to get the price this low for the Moto E, but in my honest opinion, these aren't things that are going to matter to the target demographic, that's the next billion. So the Moto E makes most sense in a country like India, where it's selling for almost half of what the Moto G does. In Western markets though, the Moto G would offer better value given that it's just $50 more. Anyway, if you do want to pick up a Motorola Moto E, you can do that from Amazon, and if you are in India, Flipkart sells the Moto E exclusively. I'll leave direct links to both stores right below the like button in the description. So I guess that pretty much wraps up this review. Hope you guys liked it, hope you found it useful. If you did, please do give this video a thumbs up, and for more videos like these, make sure you stay subscribed. So I guess that's it for now. Till next time, this is Ash here from C4E Tech signing off. You guys have a great day. Bye bye now.